Easter Sunday celebrates the resurrection of Christ. It's common for children to participate in egg hunts and for family members to gather together for lunch and have some fun. However, Easter Day for this family was anything but festive. Instead, it was filled with chilling screams, terror, and pools of cold blood, a day that would end the Ruppert's family's life forever. James Ruppert is an American mass murderer who shot 11 of his family members in just 5 minutes on Easter Sunday. He was responsible for one of the deadliest shootings inside a private property in US history. Let's unfold the case of James Ruppert. James Ruppert was born on the 12th of April 1934 to Leonard and Charity Ruppert. James had an older brother called Leonard Jr. and he was brought up in a troubled childhood. His parents described James as a mistake, as they wanted their second child to be a girl and resented him for this. James and his brother were constantly subjected to physical and verbal abuse from their parents, but mainly from their father, Leonard. His father passed away in 1947 when James was 12 years old. His brother, being 2 years older, took the role of the father figure at home. His brother started to behave just like his father, constantly abusing James. Life was so hard for James, and at the age of 16, James ran away from home and attempted suicide by hanging. However, it was unsuccessful, so he was left with no choice but to go back home and continue to endure the pain. By 1975, James had dropped out of university and trained as a draftsman. Unfortunately, he struggled to find work, so had to move back to live with his mum. On the other hand, his brother Leonard Jr. was a very successful electrical engineer who had 8 children with one of James's ex-girlfriend and living in a very nicely built house. James's jealousy towards his brother grew, turning to heavy drinking to escape the pain and the hatred he had for the family, as they were also constantly belittling him. James's built-up anger reached a point to where he formulated a plan to kill the family. Just a month before the massacre, James brought some fresh ammunition and silencer for his gun. People described his general demeanor as off, and he was also suffering from severe depression at that time. Witnesses also reported to have seen James intensely practicing his shooting skills in the run-up to the massacre. James's 41st birthday was on the 29th of March 1975, the day before the murder. Witnesses saw him target shooting tin cans along the Great Miami River in Hamilton. Later that night, he visited 19th Hole Cocktail Lounge, where he talked with one of the employees called Wanda Bishop. She testified and said, James was angry at his mother for forcing him out of her house and needed to find a way to solve the problem. He left the bar at 11 p.m. but returned later. Wanda then asked him if he had solved the problem, and he replied with, "No, not yet." On Easter Sunday, the 30th of March 1975, Leonard Jr., his wife, and their 8 children had a small lunch at his mother's house. But James didn't have lunch with them. Instead, he was upstairs sleeping off the hangover from last night. The 8 grandchildren then headed to the front garden for an Easter egg hunt. At this point, James woke up, loaded 2 handguns and a rifle before heading downstairs at around 4 p.m. He entered the kitchen, first shot his brother, mother, and then sister-in-law. 3 of the children heard the sound of a gunshot, so walked into the kitchen and they too were shot and killed. He then proceeded to kill the remaining 5 of his nieces and nephews. In total, he fired 35 rounds using 3 weapons. Within 5 minutes, the massacre was over. He then spent the next 3 hours looking at their lifeless body just to ensure they were all dead before handing himself to the police. The police quickly arrived at the scene and was horrified to see how many dead bodies were on the floor. Blood was all around the house, even leaking through the floorboards and into the basement. His trial was held in Hamilton, Ohio, and James was found guilty on all 11 counts of murder and was sentenced to life in prison. However, it was later declared as a mistrial because it was believed he couldn't receive a fair trial in Hamilton. His second trial began in June 1975, in which he was found guilty and received 11 consecutive life sentences. James's lawyer appealed as he was convinced James was insane, so he was later found guilty on 2 counts of first-degree murder of his elder brother Leonard Jr. Ruppert and his mother, Charity Ruppert. But he was not found guilty on all the other 9 counts of murder by reasons of insanity. As a result, his sentence was reduced to serve 2 consecutive life sentences. To this day, James Ruppert remains incarcerated in the Allen Oakwood Correctional Institute in Ohio. with his next parole hearing taking place in 2025, where he will be 91 years old. This year marks the 46th anniversary of the James Ruppert murder case in Ohio. Please do let me know what your thoughts are on this case, and thank you so much for watching. I hope I earned myself a subscription and a recommendation. Click here to watch another video, and please do stay safe out there, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye for now.